Okay, this is the free response question from the morning 5 and 1. Most of you got A correct, where you just had to find the derivative. So f prime of x, finding the derivative of each term individually, got us k over 2 square root of x minus 1 over x. Where a lot of you made your mistakes or made my life more difficult is by finding the common denominator here before you took the second derivative. It would have been just as easy to take the second derivative here. Remember, this is x to the negative 1/2, so that's going to make that negative k x to the negative 3/2 plus x to the negative 2. So if you had written it that way, that would have been fine. Actually, that should be 1/4, sorry. That should be over 4. That would have been an easier way of writing that than trying to combine like terms here. Okay, but most of you got that, and that was worth a point, and this is worth a point. So it's worth 2 points. All right, for the second one, find where is the critical number. So we know that the first derivative, I'm just going to rewrite that, was k over 2 square root of x minus 1 over x. And so then we want to find out where is this, if it has a critical number at 1, so we need to evaluate when x is 1, and we get k over 2 minus 1 equals 0. We said equal to 0 because if it's a critical number, then the derivative has to be 0 or undefined. So setting that equal to 0, we get k is equal to 2. So that was worth 1 point. Also setting this equal to 0 was worth 1 point. So you already have 2 points. So then you got 1 point for the answer and 1 point for the justification. Well, to determine if it's, there's 2 ways we can determine if it's the max or min. I'm going to show you what most of you did, the most popular way, which is, which is fine, which is what most of us would have done. We remember that x equals 1. So we have to take a point somewhere between 0 and 1. We can't do 0 because it's undefined at 0. So let's take a point at 1/4. So if I put in 1/4 here, I get k is 2. So I get 2 over the square root of 1/4. And I can see from that minus 1 over 1/4. From here, that cancel each other out, and then so then I have the square root of 1/4 is 1/2. Because it's over 1, it would be 2 minus 4. So I can see that that's going to give me a negative answer. Then if I take a number greater than 1, let's say 4, I get 2 over 2 times the square root of 4 minus 1/4. So 2 times the square root of 4 is 4. So this is 2 over 4, which is 1/2. 1/2 minus 1/4 is going to be positive. And so because the derivative changed from negative to positive, it's going to be a minimum. Now, most of you got that, but a lot of you lost points on your reason why. Some of you used this. Some of you said this because the sign changed. You have to be specific. You have to say what sign changed. So what you had to say is because f prime of x, you had to use that term, f prime of x went from negative to positive. But if you used ambiguous terminology such as it changed or the slope changed, not the slope, but if you just said it changed or whatever, you didn't get that point. So you have to be very specific here and say f prime of x went from negative to positive. Now, another way that you could have done this that may have been a little bit faster was to use the second derivative test. Because we already had the second derivative, and the second derivative was negative 1/4 kx to the negative, I'm trying to read that because I don't have it in front of me, x to the negative 2. So if the second derivative at x equals 1 is positive or negative, that tells us some things about the graph. So x is 1, so that gives us, and k is 2. Let's go ahead and put that in for k. So that gives us negative 1/2 plus 1, when we put in 1 for x, which is positive. So if the second derivative is positive, that means that the graph is concave up, and that where we're taking it is going to be a minimum. If the second derivative had been negative, then it would have been concave down, and then it would have been a max. Okay? So you could have also used the second derivative test here because the second derivative was already given. You had already found it. So it would have been a little easier to use that. All right, let's go to the last problem that most of you loved. That it wasn't difficult. Most of you missed points on this because of your algebra skills. So, but most of you did get 1 point because most of you did set the second derivative equal to 0. So setting the second derivative equal to 0, the second derivative was negative 1/4 k x to the negative 3/2 plus x to the negative 2. All right, so if we set this equal to 0, then that means that negative 1/4 k x to the negative 3/2 is equal to negative x to the negative 2. Multiplying both sides by 4, I get k x to the negative 3/2 is equal to negative 4x to the negative 2. Dividing by x, I get k is equal to 4x to the negative 2 over x to the negative 3/2. Okay? So simplifying this, I get 4. This is negative 3/2. When it comes up to the top, it becomes positive. This, I can look at this as 4/2. So that's going to give me x to the negative 1/2. So k is equal to 4x to the negative 1/2. Well, I think so. You got a point for setting this equal to 0, and you got a point for finding this term, for finding this. So then how do we get the next value? Well, to get the next value, we have to remember that it told you that it happened when on the x-axis, meaning that y is 0. So then the next thing we need to do is say 0 is equal to k, but k is 4x to the negative 1/2 times the square root of x minus natural log of x. Okay? So now I have, essentially I'm doing a systems of equations. So simplifying this, I get 4 equals the natural log of x. So x is equal to e to the 4th. Okay? But they wanted you to find k. So then to find k, k is equal to 4x, which is e to the 4th, raised to the negative 1/2, which gives me 4e to the negative 2, or 4 over e squared. You could write it that way as well. Okay? And that was your answer, so this was worth 1 point. So this was worth 4 points altogether, I think. It was worth 3 points. So 1 point for setting the second derivative equal to 0, 1 point for finding the value of k in terms of x, and then 1 point for finding k. Okay? And if you want to look at the rubric, that was the rubric. You can pause it and look at it for a minute. Okie dokie. That was it for this problem. I hope you do well on your test tomorrow, and have a good day.